All right, so we will go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining GroundTruth's webinar on Shopping Trends Summer Season Sizzle. My name is Rachel Nobles, and I am a Senior Account Executive on the platform team here with GroundTruth. I'm going to let my two other co-hosts introduce themselves today as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Will Merenberg. I'm also a senior account executive, but I work on our CBG partnerships team. Our team pretty much focuses heavily on driving bottom line performance for brands from not just a brand and awareness perspective, but also from a sales at retailer perspective too.
And hey guys, I'm Ben Silverstein, Vice President, Business Development, working with our strategic partnerships and new reseller partners. So any organization looking to add another tool to your sales kit from a reseller perspective, data perspective, or otherwise, I am your man. So back to you, Rachel, get us started.
Awesome, thank you guys. All right, so we're really excited to spend the next 45 minutes with you all. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we get into the nitty gritty. So first, all participants will be muted. A recording will be sent out to all attendees and registrants post-event. At any point throughout the presentation, you can submit questions via the Q&A function. There is a chat function, but if you keep the questions to the Q&A, that'll be best because that way we can just kind of keep it all in one place and keep track of everything. That way we can address everything at the end. And if you can please complete the poll that is going to be sent out to you while the webinar is running. And then lastly, if you have any follow-up questions, you can either email adexpert@groundtruth.com or you can connect directly with your dedicated GroundTruth rep. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. There we go. Okay, so quick agenda. So first we're going to cover GroundTruth and do a quick background there. Then we're going to get into lifestyle changes, summertime activity, and then lastly, the importance of localization. And then we plan to spend about 10 to 15 minutes at the end to address those Q&A questions. So first, a little bit about GroundTruth. So GroundTruth is the leading location-based marketing and advertising technology company. Using our proprietary blueprints technology along with predictive targeting products, GroundTruth is able to precisely reach mobile users in the real world and influence business performance. So since 2009, GroundTruth's focus has been to launch the idea of location as its own category in the marketing landscape. So similar to what Google did for search and Facebook did for social. Over the last decade, we've built technology focused on using the power of location intent to drive performance. And this concept emerges from the belief that a person's physical location patterns paint a more robust and true depiction of who they are as a consumer. So, like, for example, I may visit online retailers like Restoration Hardware, West Elm, to get ideas on how to decorate my home. I might even follow their pages and like them on Facebook, but in reality, I'm going to retailers like Home Goods because it's more aligned with my budget. So how does GroundTruth take location data to reach relevant customers at the right place and the right time? To do this, we first pinpoint device IDs, and secondly, we contextualize their location information. Our partnerships with over 120,000 mobile apps like Pandora, ESPN, Words of Friends help us to understand the location data of mobile device IDs who access these apps. So once a device ID is identified and the location data is vetted for accuracy, we contextualize the device ID's location information through our proprietary technology blueprints. And blueprints are essentially surgically precise virtual outlines of points of interest or businesses. And we currently have over 500 million in our system to date. So the blueprints functionality can be categorized into two categories. The first is visitation to help detect past and future foot traffic and also provide that metric of a visit. And two, the creation of targeting tactics unique to our platform, such as first-party audience segments. So, for example, affluent shoppers, jewelry enthusiasts, sit-down diners, things of that nature. So our technology provides brands and agencies with the holy grail of offline attribution, which is the metric of an in-store visit. But at the end of the day, that metric really means nothing if you can't rely on its accuracy. So each year, GroundTruth undergoes and publishes a third-party validated location accuracy audit that's conducted by Numerator. The accuracy audit compares GroundTruth's in-store foot traffic data against Numerator's confirmed purchase data for a sample of key retailers as captured through shopper receipts. Numerator then measures the reach and accuracy of GroundTruth's database of real-world consumer location and behavioral data. And as you can see, 96.2% of visits to these retailers that were observed on GroundTruth's platform were confirmed as accurate by Numerator's receipt and survey data. So now that everybody's up to speed on GroundTruth and our technology, let's get into summer season trends and how to take advantage of the insights and tools that we've gathered to help with summer season strategies coming up. We're going to start by examining how the pandemic and work from home life has shifted and impacted things like the real estate market, commutes, and in-person events. So first up is real estate. One of the unanticipated, it's a big word, impacts of the pandemic has been the influx in demand for homes, especially outside of those bigger cities. And as more roles have switched to remote, and people are just essentially kind of reevaluating their current living situations. This has driven a huge demand for real estate. So as a result, inventory is low. For the last 5 years, the number of homes for sale has mostly been declining, but this winter, that number fell by half, reaching record lows. The market is fast. Home sales jumped 24% year over year in January. Prices increased 14%. And then 37% of the listings that accepted an offer in January did so in less than 7 days. Which is crazy. Availability is tough. So when you schedule a tour, it's really important for people that are interested to kind of pick a second home that they like to see, because about 1 in 5 listings are no longer available by the time a tour is requested. So what does all this mean and how can GroundTruth help? So we have open house MLS targeting, which allows you to reach people that are visiting open houses listed in the MLS within specific time frames. So anywhere from up to 30 days or up to 120 days. And even within specific listing prices. So from less than $250K up to over $1 million. So this is a powerful tool, not only for the obvious industry, which is realtors, mortgages, anybody in the real estate space. But I really encourage you as advertisers to kind of think outside the box of other industries that could benefit from utilizing an audience segment like this. So think of furniture, storage, utility companies, even companies in the home improvement service space could benefit from utilizing an audience like this, because if you think about it, the likelihood that somebody's out shopping for a home is pretty high that they also in turn have a home to list. So they're going to be looking into doing some home updates in order to get top dollar to take advantage of this crazy market. And essentially home updates are also on the rise. Taking a look at another industry that has been significantly impacted in the past year has been in-person events. Of in-person events, we kind of categorize those into 3 different categories. So the first is corporate events. 81% of meeting planners do plan to host an in-person event this year. That essentially all but dropped last year, but I think people are feeling more and more comfortable about hosting events and getting back to that in-person reality. While most businesses do expect, about 59% expect their events to fall in the second half of 2021, only 19% are saying that they expect to hold off on hosting events until 2022 or later. So that means events like trade shows or any other corporate events where your target audience could be a great way to utilize GroundTruth as a platform. Corporate travel is likely to stay halted until there are major improvements of the pandemic stats. So think of like, kind of business travel where people are traveling to see clients and all of that, that is likely to stay halted. But one segment of events that really never saw a complete halt is sporting events. So while many sporting events did return in 2020, people returned, but at reduced capacity. Reduced capacity is still expected this year, but we are seeing an influx in sporting events as well. So again, how can GroundTruth help? Utilizing our event-based targeting tactics is going to be huge for reaching people at specific events this year. So if you have a targeted audience that you know is going to be at a trade show, for example, you want to specifically target people inside of that meeting space, but you could also reach people that are in hotel room blocks that are associated with that trade show or other kind of locations that the high likelihood of attendees are going to be there. And same with sporting events, reaching people while they're in those arenas and other locations is going to be huge for building brand awareness. And lastly, you could actually utilize our retargeting audience segment, which is going to allow you to capture everybody that's attending those events, but then retarget them once they get home, when they're more likely to be paying attention, making decisions, and all of that good stuff. Okay, so now that we've talked through real estate and events, I'm going to pass it over to Will, and he's going to cover summertime activities and additional shopping trends.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Hey, everybody again. So shifting gears a little bit, I want to share a little bit more on what we're seeing with regards to how consumers are coming back into the fold now that more and more retailers are cautiously reopening in different markets. So to start, while we saw that pretty much every retailer took a hit in foot traffic last year, some retailers definitely took less of a hit than others, namely grocery, mass merch, warehouse, and club. So this is for a couple of reasons, actually. Firstly, most of the stores that we're talking about here never fully closed down, and as they're still pretty essential for shoppers. Or sorry, not yet. Go back quickly. Almost. There we go. So firstly, most of the stores that we're talking about never really fully closed down because they were essential businesses for shoppers. Secondly, one of the things that they were able to do was adapt to the changing marketplace, and they were leaning in on curbside pickup and in-store pickup options, which was really smart for them. But having said that, we're actually seeing that consumers are starting to feel more and more comfortable going back in store these days. So what you can see here is that for visit frequency for groceries actually up 12% year over year, to mass merch is up 18% year over year, and to warehouse and club is actually 16% up 16% year over year. What we're also thinking is pretty interesting is that we're seeing consumer loyalty is up for grabs now. So we saw a dip in store loyalty among national CPG retailers, indicating that increased consumer choice is becoming a thing and routines are changing, right? People haven't been out there sticking up with the retailers that they would always go to in 2019. And so what that means for brands and shopper marketers is that there's now an opportunity to win shoppers who are developing a new shopping routine, right? And steal some of that share of voice from the major or at least routine-based CPG retailers. Next slide, please. So looking quickly at this slide, what we have here is some data that we have in our first-party platform, and we'll touch on this a little bit later with our daily foot traffic tracker, but if you haven't used that, definitely recommend using that. But what we can see here is visitation behavior across grocery, mass merch, and warehouse and club over the last year-ish. During the worst part of the outbreak, we can see massive percentages of shoppers disappearing from the market, right? However, we see that this drop was actually much smaller on major holidays and holiday seasons that fell during the pandemic. You can kind of see with the peaks that are outlined with in this graphic. And so while we're still seemingly a ways away from a complete return to life as we knew it, we are still seeing steady signs of renewed activity and return of consumer choice, which effectively heightens the need for advertising, right? As users are getting back out in the market, there's a need to get in front of them and make sure we're influencing their shopping behaviors. So in looking at these visit trends, and with major summer holidays like Memorial Day and July 4th right around the corner, it's still really clear to us that public holidays are still drawing in the most shoppers, and need to be planned for specifically, even during a pandemic. Next slide, please. So home improvement. Rachel did a good job touching on this with the real estate piece, but to go into it a little bit more, home improvement has been on a slow upward trend for a while now, even starting in 2019. But it was actually one vertical that actually saw a huge acceleration and benefited from the work from home era, as we're unofficially dubbing it now. And gardening and backyard were up the most. So we've seen visit frequency improve to home improvement stores, increase around 27% in April and May of 2020 compared to January and February of the same year. And in May, actually, foot traffic to home improvement stores almost doubled the average between March and September. So why was that, right? Well, I think primarily it was because of necessity and demand. People have been forced to use their houses more, obviously, and not just more, but differently. So in a study run by NPR, we saw just over 3 out of every 4 homeowners admitted to completing a major home project since the start of the pandemic, right? That's huge, 75% of people. And at the end of 2020, in the same study, searches for home improvement actually have been up almost 50% from the year prior. And I don't know if any of you actually have been reading or seen the Home Depot and those earnings reports, but they are wild. They've skyrocketed. Next slide, please. So kind of to go into the data on this, right? Similar type of graph as the previous one. This is using our GroundTruth daily foot traffic tracker. Here's a look into what we saw for visitation for home improvement stores last year. And you can clearly see since the onset of the pandemic, visitation actually went up as we moved into the start of summer. People are turning backyards into finished home improvement projects. Backyards are turning into decks, and ultimately outdoor just hangout areas. And we're completely expecting that this trend will continue as the vaccine continues to roll out and social distancing mandates starting to relax a little bit. Next slide, please. Cool. Now, with the summer holidays coming up, and if you're anything like me and you detest unloading and loading your dishwasher these days, I'd be a little remiss if we didn't discuss grilling season. We, carte blanche, we anticipate that people will be outdoors and on their grills in force. So we know that over 50% of US adults cook outdoors at least once a week in the summer. I even saw a study actually that indicated 48% of people whose jobs had been affected or getting paid less are still likely to cook outdoors more frequently than they did before the pandemic. So people want to be outside, people want to be grilling, and we're not expecting it to change. If you kind of look at these numbers on the right side here, clearly we can see that there's a huge percentage of Americans who grilled out on holidays during the pandemic. 4th of July showed almost 70% of Americans grilling last year, which is wild, right? No, even though they're not having huge grilling parties, people are still outdoor and grilling. And again, as social distancing protocols continue to relax and the vaccine rollout is moving forward, we're not expecting this trend to change. In fact, it'll probably get greater. So if you or your brand, have products that align with grilling season, this is definitely a time to lean in and to capitalize on these types of audiences. Next slide, please. So moving into a little bit of a creative discussion, with consumers being on their mobile devices now more than ever, I wanted to highlight something that GroundTruth can really help out that you may or may not be thinking about already. But with the warmer months coming, and because we actually own WeatherBug, it's our owned and operated app, we have the capability to leverage weather triggering your media. So essentially what that is it allows you to dynamically update your ads to showcase messaging specific to weather patterns in the user's area. So that could be based on temperature, rain, UV index, pollen count, whatever it's going to be. We can actually set the media up to trigger and only run live when those qualifying conditions exist. It's important to remember that context really matters when you're reaching your shoppers. So this is definitely a really neat tool to utilize if you haven't been already. Next slide, please. Cool, moving right along. Wanted to share some creative best practices that we've, based on some campaign performance that we've been seeing from our end. But ultimately, at a high level, it's important to think about when in the shopper journey you're reaching your shopper. So that whether it's using our audience tactics to reach consumers in the pre-shop and list building phase, or using our real-time targeting tactics to reach shoppers when they're actually on their shopping journey, the messaging really matters, right? You want to make sure that you're resonating in a unique way. So firstly, we always recommend including a dynamic distance overlay. We've seen that it can increase visitation rates to your retailers by as much as 70%. And so for those of you who are new to GroundTruth or are curious about what that is, the dynamic distance overlay is essentially just a text overlay. You can kind of see it at the bottom of right above "Get a Scoop" there. It says 2.42 miles away, and it runs through our location platform and populates on the banner ads to show the user exactly how far away from the nearest retailer he or she is. It's a really cool tool for us, and definitely puts our location technology to work. Next, banners with less than 5 words. We've seen improved CTR performance and engagement performance by 21% and visitation rate by 46%. So this might not be new information to you, but just still, you got to remember these are mobile ads, they're mobile banners, and we have a very short amount of time to make an impact with the consumer when they're seeing your stuff. So lots of text, things that are going to keep them reading, that kind of thing. It's definitely a no-no. And then lastly, banners with product images improve engagement by 21% and visitation rate by 46%. We want to make sure that we're letting the consumers know what they're buying. If we can put your products in the banners to convey that to the consumer, we always see better performance. Okay, I think that's it for me. I'll pass the mic to Ben to talk through the importance of localization.
Hey guys, thanks for that. So thanks for that intro. So to get started, what I want to talk about is on the first slide is the benefits of partnering with GroundTruth. Like I mentioned, I focus on our reseller partnerships and our strategic partnerships, organizations that are looking to add this type of sales opportunity to your existing sales set. And what are the advantages of partnering with GroundTruth to offer everything that we've kind of talked about today? Well, the first is custom capabilities. We've talked about a lot of products that we have created in the past year to deal with COVID, but we can create products, audiences, targets that are custom to you and your organization, your particular needs. It also adds incremental revenue to your stream if you can add in the ability to target some of these audiences that we've discussed, to be able to add some of these features like a distance overlay or something dynamic to your creative that's new and unique, then that can add incremental revenue to your existing sales stream. You can extend your audience. If you're selling owned and operated and selling some sort of audience already, this mobile product gives you something to add to that. And of course, it's a differentiator in market. So when you are talking to your clients, be it at a local level compared to a national or regional level, what makes you stand out compared to the other options that that advertiser may be considering? These are all really unique values that help you stand out in the marketplace. So go to the next slide. One thing that we really focus on is bringing these insights to you at the local level. So we've gone over a lot of stats today about visitation trends. Are people going back out? Are they shopping at grocery and mass merch? And the answer is yes, we're seeing that tick up. But we also know that a national trend doesn't always translate at the local level. So we've built this foot traffic tracker where you can go in and put in your market down to DMA and zip code level and say, what are people doing in my particular market with my advertisers, where my businesses are actually out and about and open and advertising? And we can see that trend, and we can go back months and see, are people starting to go out more? Are they not going out more? Or have they actually dipped? Is there a stay-at-home order that we need to keep in mind that's going to affect people's movement patterns? Or if you start to see that things are ticking back up, you can use that as ammo to go out and sell to that advertiser. If you have a local retailer and you can bring them this data that says, hey, we can see the people in our market are going back out and shopping in person, we should get you advertising, get them in front of them so that they go to you when they're out and about. It's a really, really powerful tool that is free to use for all of our partners. So go to the next slide. Continuing on that, we know that these trends are going to vary in different markets, and part of the advantage that the GroundTruth a sales team brings to you and a reseller team brings to you is that we can help explain these trends in different markets and in your markets. Okay, so we saw that visit trends were up for grocery, but how does that compare to Florida versus New York versus California? We all probably know that Florida has had looser stay-at-home orders than New York City. So we would expect that the trends in New York City are going to be different than that in Miami or in San Francisco. But we also know within those states they can be different. Upstate New York is going to be different than New York City. Jacksonville is going to be different than Miami, so on and so forth. So we can get down to those local level insights and let you bring that to your client so that you don't have to say, hey, you know, this is a national trend, and then get the question of, well, how does it apply to my local market? We can give you all of that information and allow you to package that up and bring it to those local levels. So the next slide shows a little bit more about what that might look like if we're looking at visitation to casual dining. And as we can see, it isn't necessarily a straight line. You know, as things start to warm up this summer, we hope that people are going to go out more and do more indoor dining and things like that. But if you're following the news, you can see Miami, for example, has an influx of spring breakers and people traveling, and they've had to change their shutdowns and their stay-at-home orders. So it's not necessarily always a straight line. There are going to be trends in different markets that we'll continue to expect throughout at least the first half of this year, if not the full year. And this tool can help us to identify those trends and sell against them accordingly. So the next slide talks a little bit about some of the audiences that we have built to combat that. So we have these shelter-in-place audiences. And what we've done here is we've looked at visitation trends of individuals and grouped them into high, medium, and low movement. And that's because even when we look at all these trends and we look at different areas and different states and different demographics, we see that not everyone is reacting the same way. Just because a particular area or state is open for business doesn't mean that everyone's comfortable going out, dining in person, or doing in-store shopping. Some people may prefer to continue to do food delivery and grocery delivery and buy things online, have it delivered to them rather than go out in person. Other people may be more comfortable doing that. So if you're advertising your brick and mortar store and trying to drive that in-person traffic, you may want to focus on those individuals who are more likely to take that action, more likely to go visit you. So you may want to use the high movement audience. Say, these are people who are out and about in my particular area, and I want to target them so that when they are out and about, they go to my store. On the flip side, if you are focused on maybe app delivery, food delivery, online e-commerce, you may want to focus on that low movement audience because that may be the type of person who's more likely to engage with that online delivery service. And then the next one talks about curbside pickups. If we go to the next slide, we've gone beyond just this shelter at home, but seen, are people actually doing curbside pickup? A lot of businesses and restaurants have moved to that as an option. And using our blueprint technology, we've been able to actually identify which users are going to the curbside pickup areas. And for some places like Walmart or Kroger, they've actually mapped out particular parking spaces that are designated for that curbside pickup. And we can target those individuals. So if you have a business that is promoting curbside pickup as an option, we can target people who have specifically done curbside pickup at other places, other businesses. And so we want to heavy up our audience there. So it's using our location technology and our location targeting in a unique way to deal with these changing trends. And quite honestly, we expect that over the course of this year, we'll probably introduce new audiences like this. We'll continue to refine these. So definitely reach out to your different contacts to see what can we do, what targeting tactics, audiences might make sense for your particular clients, and how can we use these tools, a foot traffic tracker, in conjunction with these new audiences to find a new approach, a new package to put in front of your local advertiser. And then finally, the last slide is just re-emphasizing that we are really a cross-device omni-channel platform. We are, at our core, a location platform, location first, second, third, and last, but we can target that location audience outside of just mobile. If you want to target that shelter-in-place user on desktop and on OTT, we can do that. If you want to run an OTT or a desktop-specific buy and track foot traffic along with that campaign, we can do that on our platform. So even though mobile is where we really started, and probably most people on this call, I'd imagine you're using us for mobile, remember, we can do so much more than just that, and everything is tied back to that location, back to these blueprints, back to our first-in-class blueprint technology. So thank you guys so much for sticking along with us for today's session. We're going to open it up to Q&A. So Rachel, Will, and I are here to answer any questions. I think there are a couple in the chat, so we'd love to open it up to see what other questions you guys might have.
Okay, so I see the first question says, I know you have retargeting, but I heard you launch Facebook remarketing. For example, if an ad recipient opens a mobile ad and they have a Facebook page, GT can now remarket to them on social page. If so, how does that work? So yes, we do have functionality that allows for retargeting on Facebook. What that would require is for you as the advertiser to have your own Facebook Business Manager page. From that page, you would essentially grab a Facebook retargeting pixel. It's very simple. You would then append that Facebook retargeting pixel onto the creative of the ads that you're running through GroundTruth. And then what that's going to do is essentially pull all the mobile devices that you are initially hitting through GroundTruth. We're going to automatically push those MAIDs into your Facebook account, and you can then use those mobile devices to essentially hit a custom audience segment inside of Facebook. So it does require you to have your own Facebook Business Manager account. It will require you to run your own separate Facebook campaign, but we do have that capability. And if you're interested in learning more, I definitely encourage you to reach out to your GroundTruth rep, and they can send over additional details there. Okay, next question. So what % are you seeing in the movement segments? Does it vary regionally, or is it pretty consistent nationally? So that's actually a great question. I'm assuming, well, actually, I'm assuming the question is moving for real estate, but maybe it could be movement foot traffic. So I'm going to assume real estate, but again, I hope if that's not the right question that you want answered, just ping us afterwards and we can do a better job. But I would say nationally, moving trends are pretty consistent, across the US. What we are seeing is the movement trends are absolutely higher in suburb areas. So any locations that have kind of those bigger city areas where people initially are spending a lot of time, renting out, they are now moving to more of a, kind of a suburban demand, just simply because people don't need to be in the cities as much. People are working from home. People don't need to worry about commuting. People want more space. If you've been stuck in your house for a year, I think that's understandable. So I would say it's consistent across the US, but more consistent in those suburban areas outside of the larger cities. Okay.
There are a couple questions about the foot traffic tracker. So we can put a link probably in the chat here, or we'll make sure everyone will get a follow-up email from this, and we'll include the link to it. But if you go to the GroundTruth website, you may be able to find it there as well, but we'll make sure to send out the exact link either in this chat or as a follow-up. And then there's a question about how the data is delivered. IDFA, AID recognized, and is it all anonymized to maintain PII, personally identifiable information? So we do collect MAIDs. So IDFA on iOS and UID in Android, and we do not collect any other PII. So we're not collecting phone numbers or names or emails or anything else. In any situation where a third party may include that, yes, we do anonymize it. So we're not reporting out on any PII.
Okay. And I'm just going through the chat to make sure, and it looks like there was a couple questions that came in. So I see one question from Cheryl saying, how does targeting of open house fall into existing options, location retargeting. So essentially, our open house targeting, you can either do real-time location targeting, or you can do an audience-based targeting, which would allow you to reach people that have been to those locations within the past, X amount of days. So you can essentially utilize either function. The retargeting option, however, with open houses is not available. So definitely reach out to your rep. I see, Cheryl, you mentioned Ben, so he can sync up with you more about that functionality and how that works. And, he'll get into more of the details there. All right, I'm just making sure. There's a question about, will there be a recording to download? Yes, absolutely. There's going to be a recording that goes out to all registrants and attendees, and it's shareable as well. So you can feel free to share that with anybody that that is interested in viewing this afterwards. I think that is it. Oh, so a couple more questions came in through the Q&A. Will, I think maybe, do you want to take this one? It says, do you foresee some of these consumer trends to stay in the years to come? Also, which channel, grocery, mass merch, do you think has the biggest opportunity in regards to change in the shopping behavior?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And obviously it's one that we definitely need to keep monitoring. Do I foresee that these trends are here to stay? I think yes, right? I think most of some of the good things that happen in the industry as a result of the outbreak are that it highlighted a lot of new shopping behaviors and new ways to buy that most retailers didn't know were available, right? So I think which, kind of lends itself to the thinking that which channel do I think is going to have the biggest opportunity. Those are going to be grocery stores are going to be huge, right? As they're starting to build out in-store pickup and grocery delivery services. Mass, similar kind of deal. If they're not built already, I'm sure these retailers are building them out. But yeah, dude, I am pretty confident that these trends are here to stay, and if they're not staying, they will definitely adapt. I do want to point out that that's not to say that everything is going to go in this direction. Foot traffic and in-store sales are still going to be a huge piece of the revenue models for these retailers. And so it's really important that we're still planning for the return of that consumer, right? So eventually people are, and we're already seeing it now as I kind of talked through in the data, but we're seeing people go back in store. And it's just a matter of how are these retailers going to be able to secure these new shoppers? As Rachel was saying, people are moving, and so they have to build new routines. So there's definitely a huge opportunity for grocery mass and all of the retailers.
Awesome. Okay, so the next question was, can you take a home market group, let's say New York, New Jersey, DMA, and send those people ads only when they enter a different geofence miles away? I'm not sure if I completely understand the question, so I'm going to do my best to answer it, but if I misunderstood what you're asking, please send a follow-up question to that ad experts at GroundTruth or your dedicated rep. But I am thinking when you say a home market group, you might mean a list of residential locations and basically those maids that sit within those residential locations. And then you want to target those same people with ads in a different geofence after they've left. So with any type of residential targeting or like open house, like MLS targeting, our retargeting capabilities are limited. And that's just due to some privacy regulations that we have to adhere to. But like I said, reach out to ad experts or your dedicated rep to kind of clarify your question in specifics, and we can get you a better answer on whether or not we can do what it is that you're asking to do.
One thing I just wanted to kind of piggyback on that is a lot of times we have partners who, they will come to us with asks about, can we reach these shoppers within a certain radius or certain mileage of a particular point of interest, a grocery store or whatever, a DMA or something like that. That kind of thinking, we have a way of circumventing that kind of thinking with a lot of our products. Namely, all of our audiences are built based on where users have been previously, right? And we know that, especially during COVID, people are traveling when they do need to go places. People, are okay traveling a little bit further distances, and it's not necessarily because they live within a mile of a certain retailer anymore, right? So, in our kind of estimation, if we see somebody that has a tendency to shop at a particular retailer, it doesn't really matter how far away they are from that retailer at a certain point. Rather, it's way more important that we know that they are a loyalist of that retailer. So, I think when you're framing these kinds of questions, it's really important to understand, does it really matter if we're reaching somebody who is, a half a mile away from the store, or is it more important to reach somebody who we know lives over a mile away from the store, but it's maybe on the way back from work or something like that? And those are all different data points that we have in our platform and targeting tactics that we can put together and recommend for you.
Awesome. Okay, last couple questions. So I see a question from Greg saying we want to gather data on the number of people who have visited certain locations in the past. Can we get that data? Greg, the short answer is maybe. It depends on what type of data you're looking for and what you're looking to do with it. We do have, some strict policies around what data we share, just due to the privacy regulations that we have to adhere to. So to get more information on that, reach out to your rep, and they can kind of get into more details for you there, and take it from there. And then last question I saw come in was, if I wanted to utilize a self-serve platform, what is the minimum to get started? So that is my neck of the woods. I work on the platform team. So we don't have any minimum spend requirements. We also don't lock you into any contracts or any fees associated with utilizing the platform. Your rep, depending on what your goals are and what you're looking to do, we're going to have recommendations for how much you spend depending on what you want to get out of it, right? You don't want to just throw $20 towards something and expect all these amazing results. So to answer your question, there is no minimum to get started. You have complete control and can decide on that. Work with your rep directly to determine what budgets are best to start with, and you can kind of take it from there. I think that is it. As far as all the questions that came in, like we mentioned multiple times, if there's anything that we missed, just reach out to adexpert@groundtruth.com or connect directly with your GroundTruth rep. There's also a ton of resources on groundtruth.com that you can check out. And then please do not forget to take the poll. We would really greatly appreciate your feedback. Just that way we can get better and better on how we present these topics to you and make sure that we, address what it is that y'all want to see. But I think that is everything. So thank you again so much, everybody, for joining. I speak for, Ben and Will as well. And we say we enjoyed hanging out with y'all. And we will follow up with any additional questions and we will go from there. Bye, guys.